Souldiers was one of 3 games that I wanted for this month. I was already waiting for it last month, but for some reason it moved to June, which increased my expectation. It's not a bad game per se, but I didn't feel it was special. Since you are here, you know the drill. Just leave a sub, a like, a comment. It helps a lot and I'll be very grateful. Thank you so much. What happened before writing this review was unprecedented. Hold on to your chairs, hold on a little bit more. I went to read about the story of the game. Seriously, I did. Although I'm not in the habit of doing it, the reason I did it was that I didn't got it while I was playing. At least partially. The kingdom of Zarga is at war with the kingdom of Dadelm. In a brilliant tactical maneuver, the captain of one of the armies decides to explore a cave in order to counterattack the others. In an unpredictable way, I can say. What is more predictable is that something went wrong. An earthquake traps all the regiments in the caves and they all eventually die. In the midst of this, a Valkyrie appears and offers them a new opportunity to fight for their lives if they go with her, and thus begins the adventure in Terra Gaia, the world between the living and the dead. I feel like I've already lost the excitement for pixel art. In Souldiers, it didn't happen differently. Don't get me wrong, the 32-bit art style is pretty good, but what's most impressive is the complexity of some details, such as the appearance of tiny spiders from each cocoon, something that must be quite difficult to animate, and whose practical purpose is null. It was just added to improve the environment. Beautiful and very well made. As for the music, I have to compare how adequate it is with its quality. Well, the music is pretty good, calm and relaxing, which makes me say that it doesn't fit in the slightest in a dynamic game like Souldiers. When we want something that makes us speed up, they give us a sedative. It does not match. When I started playing, nothing reminded me of the metroidvania genre. Nothing whatsoever. The game reminded me in a way of Shakan, the Forever Man, that I've played in my Game Gear in the 1994 or 1995. It felt more like an action platformer. It felt like I could always advance, and the labyrinthine structure of the level didn't seem to be limiting at all. Gradually, we realized the degrees of Metroidvania in the game. On the one hand, each dungeon has a bit of these principles, albeit in a self-limiting way. On the other hand, each new dungeon adds a new layer of skills. Here is where my problems begin. Being a Metroidvania, there are a lot of mini annoyances that, well, annoy. Especially when you add that little Souls-like tick. As a platform game, it is very good. Old-fashioned exploration with false walls, labyrinthine configuration of each level, different enemies. As Metroidvania fails to reward the exploration, the interconnections of dungeons, makes the game look like a poor man's Ori, and the size of the dungeons, which apart from the first one, all seem too big for what they offer, becoming repetitive over time. As a Souls-like, it fails with the controls, as some actions seem to be unrecognized when we try to do them. Although with this, I'm not sure if the problem was from the 3 Xbox controllers I used when playing, or with the game itself. Although it seems strange to me that all of them have the same problem. It's also annoying that some attacks start off-screen, which even with sound cues don't allow for an adequate reaction, as we don't know for sure from where they will appear. And also there are some enemies that are just damage sponges or appear in mobs without anything to justify it. In the first dungeon, the checkpoints are very well placed, so death is not excessively penalizing. But in the following dungeons, this is not always the case. There are times when they are really hard to find. Adding to that the abusive loading times. It doesn't make any sense to go get a coffee every time I die or change dungeon. With this, and although the scenario seems heavy at the moment, Souldiers is not a bad game. We can choose between 3 classes: Scout, Caster and Archer. The names are a bit self-explanatory, but generally speaking, the Scout is the conventional melee soldier, the others work with a ranged attack. We can't change classes during the game, so it's best to test them for a while and see which one we prefer. Both ranged fighting classes felt underpowered in the early game, but clearly easier to play in the later stages of the game. This brings me to how we skill up. We level up our damage and health passively as we fight, but we also gain skill points, which we find throughout the dungeon, that we use to progress in the skill tree. There are also 3 difficulty levels we can choose from. I choose the easiest one, and even that one seemed a little bit above my potential and reflexes, but nothing you couldn't manage. I believe that any of the above difficulties are capable of providing a suitable challenge for any player. The difficulty is progressive, with the first dungeon functioning almost as an introduction to the game. I played mostly as a scout, which fights in the enemy's face, and with that I was able to notice that some of the hitboxes had some flaws, or were not always clear, especially when we had to attack enemies that were in the air. With 2 types of attack, a roll and a shield, the fight promises to be diverse, but it is not always so, either because of the similarity between attacks or because of the weird stamina system associated with the use of some actions. I've enjoyed playing Souldiers, but I was a little disappointed. A very slow progression, a somewhat derisory way to reward exploration, and failures in combat moments left me with some bitterness in my mouth. And what about loading times? Well, the €20 is right there on the threshold of waiting for a promotion, which would certainly be what I would have done had I not received the game for free. A word for the art book. For those who like them, this one is pretty good. See you next time, guys. Bye!